Happy Independence Day if you're listening to this when this release came out. This is episode 402 of the AM PM podcast. My guest this week is Morgan Gist MacDonald. You know, Amazon started out selling books, and that's what we're going to be talking about today is maybe you've got a really cool idea inside of you. You've always been wanting to publish a book, and you're thinking about that, whether it be you as a consultant, maybe it's your life stories, maybe it's a children's book. And Morgan runs a company that helps authors actually do that, helps them self-publish, helps you guide through the entire process. It's a pretty cool episode. I met Morgan at a Driven conference, Perry Belcher's big mastermind. It's like $30,000 a year, a marketing mastermind that he does. Super smart. She's really good at what she does. So I think you can find it fascinating. Even if you don't want to publish a book yourself, I think you're going to find this fascinating and see the parallels between Amazon sellers and e-commerce and the book publishing world and some of the differences as well. So enjoy this episode with Morgan.
Welcome to the AM/PM podcast. Welcome to the AM/PM podcast, where we explore opportunities in e-commerce.
We dream big and we discover what's working right now.
Plus, this is the podcast where money never sleeps, working around the clock in the AM and the PM.
Are you ready for today's episode?
I said, are you ready? Let's do this. Here's your host, Kevin King. Kevin King.
Morgan Gist MacDonald, how are you doing? Welcome to the AM/PM podcast. I finally got you on here. You're a hard cat to corral.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm so thrilled to be here. I'm a listener. I love the show. Honored to be here with you.
Are you still in Texas or are you somewhere else now?
It's hard to keep track, I admit. We're currently in Texas. Most recently, before Texas, we were in Colorado, and we've lived kind of around the world. But currently in Texas, so not too far from you.
So you're out in the Panhandle, right? Out in where all the oil money is.
West Texas, Midland, nothing but tumbleweeds and cows and oil rigs. Nothing to see out here.
I went to jail just outside of Midland, in a little town one time. I know that really well. There's a little what's the name of that little town? It's a little town just outside of Midland where I had when I was in college, I got a speeding ticket in College Station, Texas. I went to A&M, and I moved to Arizona briefly for like 10 months. And on the way back, I ended up chasing a business opportunity out there and didn't work out. So I came back and ended up going back to Dallas. On my way, I was on I-20, I think it went, I-20. And in my little U-Haul, just pumping along at like 60 miles an hour. But the speed limit back then was 55. Now I think it's like 80 or something, but back then it was like 55. I get pulled over and cop runs my license like, oh, you have a speeding ticket from like 2 years ago you never took care of.
Yeah.
Midlothian, that's where it was, Midlothian.
Nice.
So I just came back to me. So I went to jail for the weekend. It was a Friday. I think it was a Friday, and it was a holiday freaking weekend. So I went to jail in Midlothian on a Friday night. It's me and one other dude in this little cell, another guy just in there. And I couldn't see the judge until Tuesday to post my bond or whatever. So I stayed from Friday night to Tuesday. I called my parents and I said, hey, I need to bail out because it was $1,000 bail, I think, or something like that. Normally it's $10,000. It was a small amount. I needed to come up with $1,000 basically. And I didn't have $1,000 because I was like robbing Peter to pay Paul to try to get I was 22, 23. And I called my dad and he's like, parents, and my dad's like, nope, I ain't giving you any money. You've been trying to do this entrepreneur thing. You have a college degree. You come back home and you get a real job. You go work for a real company. I don't care if you got to go work at Brahms ice cream shop for a little while, but you get a real business, do something for real. I was like, no thanks, Dad. So I called my uncle in California and he puts it on a credit card. And so, I never had to, I didn't take my dad's offer. And I've been an entrepreneur ever since. So yeah, that's my West Texas little story there.
That's like part of your hero's journey, Kevin. If you ever do it, that's going in there.
I was just on a podcast literally before we recorded this. I just did an AI podcast with Joe, and she asked me about a story, and I told her another story about where I went to jail again for writing a bad check to the U.S. Post Office. For one night, she's like, Kevin, you need to write a book. I was like, I do, but I know just the person to actually, like, if I want to write that book that can help me really do this the right way. And that's you. Because you're like the book lady, or goddess or whatever you want to call it. You're like, when it comes to books, you're the one everybody should be contacting. So when speaking of that, your company is what's the name?
Paper Raven Books is the company name. Yep, and I founded it. Yep, and we've been publishing books for 9 years, and a couple hundred books under our belts, and lots of authors helped. And we published my book. It was our first one. That was our guinea pig book back in 2015. And and we've just been. I mean, we've been talking about the power of Amazon for authors for almost a decade now. Before it was cool.
So what was your book about? Was it a fictional book, or was it your life story of Morgan, or what was your book about?
For anyone who, if this is going up on YouTube at all, but start writing your book today.
Oh, imagine that. Okay.
How to write a book. A step-by-step plan to write your nonfiction book from first draft to finished manuscript. So this was like
awesome.
I was a writing coach and book editor, and I worked with book editors. I had a small sort of editing team. That's what I did before we started publishing. So like out of grad school. So 2008 to 2015, I was focused on the editing part, and people kept asking me like, okay, thanks for helping me write the book and edit the book, but how do I get it published? And I was like, it can't be that hard. Like, I'll write a book and I'll publish it and I'll take notes along the way. And so that was our first book that we published in 2015.
Oh, that's awesome. So you were working, was it this like a big company, like a Random House or one of those type of big companies that you were working in the editorial department? Or was this your own little gig? Or
This was my own little gig. So I went to grad school. I was getting a doctorate in sociology. I thought I was going to be a professor of sociology, and got into academia, realized not for me. I'm too entrepreneurial, kind of thinking way too far outside the box. Great people, but not for me. And so I left after the master's, and my husband had a job in New York. I actually applied for a ton of jobs with publishing houses in New York. And I thought, this is a great fit. I have a master's in sociology, all these different presses that have, academic arms and things like that, but didn't get any bites really. And so I thought, well, I know I want to do something with books. Like I'll start, I've got some contacts from my grad school days. I'll at least start doing some editing and put my feelers out there, and just kind of started it slowly. We had kids at that time. We had 2 little ones in New York. So nap times and bedtimes, and I was doing a little bit of teaching on the side. So it was your classic like entrepreneurial side hustle. And slowly over the course of a few years, got enough clients under my belt and my referral network spreading out that, we were editing books, week in and week out. And I had enough work that I had other editors who were working with me. So I essentially created a book editing company. We were Paper Raven editing for a few years before everyone started saying, okay, but now I want it to be a book. And I realized, okay, let's be Paper Raven Books and let's go full hog, editing, design, publication, launching the book. And that's when I really started to kind of appreciate how independent authors are experiencing so much more freedom and ability to grow their own platform and their own customer base these days. So it's been quite the journey.
Books are still, a lot of people dismiss it, just like they dismiss direct marketing or direct mail, getting something in the mail. But books are still a big business. There's still a lot there. And how have you seen it change over the last 15 or 20 years since you've been doing it? What have you seen evolve?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all remember the kind of heyday of Barnes & Noble, kind of early 2000s. That, I think a lot of us would have said, yeah, that's what you do on a Sunday afternoon. You go to Barnes & Noble, browse the shelves, and maybe you come home with a stack of books. Maybe you don't, but like it's a fun excursion. And, around that same time was when the Kindle was coming out and Amazon was starting to get more popular. And, we even feel it, like if we think back over, I think our own reading habits. I mean, I remember when I first got the Kindle, I was like, oh, I'm never going to love reading on my Kindle as much as I love paperback books. But it's just convenient, right? Like Amazon nails convenience. And so now I read almost everything on my Kindle. I mean, I have stacks of books and I'll leaf through books every now and then, and I'll take a book with me on a plane occasionally, but it's a lot of e-reading and audiobooks. And we've seen Spotify even jump in on the audiobook game. And I think, with the different formats, the physical books and the ebooks and the paperbacks, yes, we've seen obviously a huge shift into Amazon having a massive portion of the book retail, the market share. Some of that's coming back, especially with just grassroots movements. I think TikTok's been a part of this, where people are buying more paperback books. And if they're going to buy paperback books, they are going sometimes to local bookstores or indie bookstores. And those bookstores are highlighting, TikTok, book talk kinds of featured books. And so there's a bit of an interesting symbiotic relationship there. So I think we had seen, the shift from Barnes & Noble to Amazon, and then we saw a proliferation in the types of reading, ebook and audiobook really came in. And now we're seeing a proliferation in like the places you can buy books. Amazon's currently the big hitter, but I think, Barnes & Noble opened more bookstores in 2023 than it had in the last 5 years. And indie bookstores are also doing well. There's a bookshop.org that helps sell books online that supports indie bookstores. So I think we're going to see a lot more competition in places that are selling books. Amazon's still the big gorilla in the room, though, so you can't ignore Amazon. You got to kind of start with Amazon and then branch out, as an author.
When it comes to a lot of people, like especially like people that want to speak or they want to become an authority figure. A lot of them, one of the biggest things is people say is, well, you need to write a book. You need to write a book about whatever you're an expert on, whether it's AI or marketing or losing weight or whatever it is. You need to write a book because that gives you authority. Even if you only print 500 of them, the fact that you can say you're an author and you have a book can go a long ways. Do you see that to be true? Just the fact that you've published a physical book and you can hold it in your hand gives you almost like instant credibility, no matter how good the book is or not?
I'm going to say no.
Okay. Awesome.
because I think it was more true back in the day when we didn't have all these reader reviews. So back in the day, you could publish a book, you could get someone to print it for you, you could take it to your speaking engagement, and no one would they'd be like, oh, look, it's a book, like they're legit. Now you're speaking on stage. I remember doing this. I mean, I do this all the time with people who are speaking on stage, and they, show on the screen, their book, or they hold up their book. I'm on Amazon. I'm looking at how many reviews that book has. If that book has 2 reviews, I'm going to say, you're going to start getting the wrinkled brow, like, really? Uh-huh. And so I think that it's not enough just to publish a book. We all kind of know that that's possible for pretty much anyone these days. And so I think that you have to have the social proof come around it. And that's reader reviews, that's endorsements, or praise blurbs in your industry. I even think sometimes there's room for like a book award, depending on, your topic or your genre or what you're writing in. We need a little bit more kind of social proof on the books these days.
So you think that though? So I agree with what you said. I think it's a misnomer that people like, I just need to get a book and then I'm official. I've made it. But if they get a New York Times bestseller or they get 10,000 reviews, 5-star reviews on Amazon, then you think that actually does add a feather to the cap that would help them as a public speaker or getting paid engagements or raising the rates or getting more business as a consultant or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a few things that can happen, and I can provide a couple scenarios. Like one, in the publishing of the book, even before you have all the reviews and all the accolades and that sort of thing, publishing the book in itself helps you to reach out to your previous clients. You can, ask them to be a part of the book launch team, and so you can re-engage people that you might have known in your life. That can result in new revenue right then and there. I mean, I think, one of our authors, Tom Emerson, he launched his book, and within the first 30 days of his book launch, he had $350,000 in consulting gigs booked for the year, not because of the number of reviews on his book, but because of the reach outs he was doing because of the book. The book gives you a really great narrative for reaching out to folks. So that's one, and I don't want to be dismissive of that. That can really help you get sort of, if you want to get some clients re-engaged right off the bat. I mean, inviting them to be part of your book launch and honoring them in some way in the book launch can be really, really helpful. After that, so after you publish the book, does it help you to get new clients? I think so. I mean, I've been invited to, be on podcasts and stages that they have no clue who I am really. They just see that I've published this book and they look on Amazon, I've got 2,000 reviews, which is not even that many compared to the fiction authors who get there are the New York Times bestselling authors, the big authors that get tens of thousands of reviews these days. But it's enough, right, to sort of say, okay, this person kind of knows what she's talking about. And some of our other authors like Stephen Ajay, I know that he got on a bunch of stages, Jolie Hamilton. So it's taking the book and doing something productive with it, right? It's going to conferences and speaking agents and saying, here, I wrote this book. Here are the topics I speak on. Here's the audience I speak best to, right? So the book is still something that you need to put some work behind, if that makes sense.
So if I want to write a book, how do you advise people to decide what to write? Maybe I got some ideas like, I want to write a children's book for my kids so that I can read it to them. Or I got lots of interesting stories of my life. I want to write a biography. Or no, I want to write about marketing because I'm pretty good at marketing. I want to do how to sell on Amazon. I've got a course. Why don't I just take the course and turn it into a book? What should I do? I'm coming to you, Morgan. You're the book girl. You're the book goddess. What do? I want a book. I just want to be cool. I want to have a book and say I'm an author. What do I do? What would you tell me?
You're hitting right at the very first question is like, what's the point of the book? Like we really have to get centered on that. It is funny. We already kind of stumbled upon this earlier in our conversation where we have this interesting thing that we do in our culture where if someone starts telling an interesting story, we'll say, man, you should write a book. I don't know why that's what we say.
It is.
But it is what we say. Or the other situation.
People love stories. People love stories. And that's how you sell. You sell through stories.
Yeah.
If you think about the best speakers out there, they don't get up on stage and start going into the tactics, into the hacks, into the whatever. They tell a story. You look at Funnel Hacking Live, or you look at any big event where the best speakers always have a story.
Yeah.
Or they lead with, if the whole talk is not a story, they lead with a story to draw you in. So I think that's part of the reason psychologically we always say that. But it's interesting that you do that.
A story with a point, I would say, is what we want to go for. So, for instance, your story of jail in Midlothian ended up with a point about kind of you came to a fork in the road with your father about like whether you're going to pursue this entrepreneurial thing or not, and
right.
you found another way, right? You found your uncle. So, like that actually did play into your overall, as I sort of cheekily said, hero's journey. On the other hand, I do want to go ahead and just like say this out loud while I have a microphone in front of me. Some of us, we talk for 40 minutes without taking a breath, and everyone who's listening to us has no idea what to say. And so the polite thing then becomes, wow, you should write a book. Because no one knows what to say to the 40 minutes of unending storytelling that you just gave them, and they don't have a good response. And so that is the response. And so I would say, if you find yourself just gut check when I'm at a dinner party, is it often that I'm talking for 40 minutes and no one else is getting in a word in edgewise? And the response I get is, you should write a book. I'm going to tell you should not write that book. Please don't. That is different. And, maybe what you would do in that case is start to curate. Okay, if I am a storyteller, am I a good storyteller? What are the stories that actually have mattered in my life's journey? If I think about my hero's journey, which particular stories have mattered the most? And then can I spend some time kind of crafting those stories? And again, we want to land on a point or a purpose to the book. And so I would pull us back, Kevin, and I would say, okay, when you see yourself selling this book, and maybe it's whether it's e-commerce or in person, doesn't really matter. But let's say the book is really well received. Everyone loves it. They're like, Kevin, I read your book. It's so great. What do you hope it makes possible for you? This first book, you can write many books, but the first one that you would really feel like, I want to write this book. Would it be speaking? Would it be clients? Would it be kids' bedtimes? What
for me, it would be inspiration for other people. I would be, that's where I find the best is if I could, I'm already on a lot of stages. I'm already out there, so I don't need it to open doors. Or to do that. And it would not be so much about the money, because I know sitting down and writing a true book takes time. It's a lot of effort into writing a good book. And I write a newsletter twice a week. It takes me 3 or 4 hours to write each newsletter. I personally write it. It's not AI or something else. But to sit down and write a book, chapter by chapter, and to pace it out, I'm sure you have a structure in the way what you teach and way to brainstorm it and a way to craft it. But that's work. It's real work. Whether you're doing it yourself or you have a ghostwriter doing it and you're just telling them stories and they have to craft it and you review it. But for me, it's the inspirations. Where I get benefit is where if I've taught something to somebody, like through the Freedom Ticket course on how to sell on Amazon, and 4 years later they come to me I'm standing in line at launch at a show, at an Amazon show, and someone's like, "Hey, Kevin, I just saw you there. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Danny. I took your course 4 years ago, and now I'm doing $50 million a year on Amazon." That's validation that I'm like, I didn't do that. You did that. I gave you the foundation. and the knowledge of how to do that. And that makes me feel good. Sometimes it might make me feel like an imposter because I haven't done $50 million in 1 year on Amazon. I've done a lot of money, but and then the other thing I do is inspirational. Like now what I do when I talk, I added this just this year is I'm known for hacks. That's what people like in the Amazon space. I'm known for like the little quick little 2-minute, 3-minute hitters. And I like talking about more in depth about marketing or psychology or different things. But every time I do those, people just love it. So I'm like, okay, give the people what they love. But I started adding something this year about personal stories. I always get people coming up to me going, man, the tactics were freaking amazing. I couldn't write notes fast enough, but your opening was awesome. I really, thanks for doing that. Nobody talks about that. Nobody shares that. So that's what I would be doing in a book format, is going into more detail or something along those lines so that people walk away with it. Because people that are successful in life, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And sometimes, and everybody's got their issues. Everybody's got their relationship problems, their health problems, their family issues or whatever. And most people just shove that under the rug and don't talk about it. And as entrepreneurs, you need to know that you're not alone. You're in this little world doing your stuff, but there's other people going through crap too. And so if just one person walks away from that going, holy cow, that just helped me a lot. I did my job. So that's what I would be looking to do in a book format. So it's not, for me, it's not about the credibility or the money. And it's putting the stories down. And one of the best things that my dad did, and I wish more people would do, is I've been telling my buddy Norm has all these stories. And I was telling him, you should do what my father did. My father's in his 80s. So about 3 or 4 years ago, I get this email. I've since printed out this email, but it's about 20 pages of short stories. So probably 3 stories per page, 2 or 3 stories per page, just a couple paragraphs on each one. But it's like How I Met Your Mother. And it's a story about how he went to a movie theater and, someone got up to go to the bathroom and he took their seat and, whatever. And then it's, how he had to shoot his first dog and had to put it under, and he had to be the guy that pulled the trigger. His stories about Vietnam when he pulled over a boat after they had killed people and he found a picture of the guy's family in his pocket, of his kids and his wife. And, it was a whole series of stories that were preserved. And so some of it I'd heard, but he wrote them down. Mm. So he could pass that on to me. It's not important for a lot of people, but for me, it's important. So the fact that he did that, and I've gone back and I've read those 2 or 3 times, since then, that's the kind of stuff that I think a book could help, or you're just getting those stories down. Sorry, that's enough of me talking. I just talked for 40 minutes.
Well, yeah. Kevin, you should write a book.
Yeah, there you go. I was waiting for it. I was like, come on now, Morgan, play along.
Well, you hit on a few things that I want to underscore and highlight for us. So one, what your dad did, I think, is actually a really great exercise for many writers, is just thinking about what are the important stories in my life. And maybe you write a paragraph about them, or maybe it's just kind of bullet point notes, just kind of reminding yourself. Ultimately, for a book, you're probably going to select and curate something like 15 stories. So the way that you think about a story before a speech is perfect, right? It probably takes you 3 to 5 minutes to tell that story. That's probably getting pretty close to at least the beginning meat of a chapter. You might, expand on it a little bit when it's in written form or something like that. But, if you sit down and brainstorm, what are all the stories in my life that have kind of helped me become who I am today? And write those out. It can be a list. You can do Post-it notes on the wall. It really doesn't matter. And then also start to think about the life lessons or the business lessons that you would want to pass on to people. They can be separate from the stories, but you might have just a separate list going on. Here's all the life lessons or the business lessons or the James Clear 4 burners theory that maybe it's not even mine, but I can credit it, and then talk about how it's affected my thinking. But what are those lessons or principles that you really want to communicate? And you can almost, if you put the lists together, you curate the stories, curate the principles, what really matters here, you can almost start to mix and match them. Like the old, school exercises, we had to draw a line from one to the other and one to the other. And so that's, I think, an easier way to come about a structure from this kind of bottom up. What are the stories? What are the life lessons? Which ones really rise to the top as these must be in the book? And then you can start to see how they, one story might match really well with a lesson. Okay, that's starting to become a chapter. And you can start to sort of see it might be chronological, it might not be chronological, but you'll start to feel it as it's coming together, how those stories and lessons are going to line up together. And ultimately, when when people ask me like, Morgan, should I be the one to write this book or should I get a ghostwriter? A lot of times I will suggest to people, try writing the first draft. I mean, just like you said, you learn so much about yourself when you write the first draft of your stories and of your chapters. And you can bring in, a book coach to support you or an editor to like make it 100 times better later. But you doing the very first draft helps you to see your own stories and lessons and takeaways so much more clear. And at the end of the day, you're going to have to get to a point where at the beginning of the book, you are one person. At the end of the book, you are a different person. You might be the only person who can like draw that narrative arc of like, I started here. I went through these moments in time and I learned these lessons and I became who I am today. I'm not finished, but this is who I am today. And this is how I've changed. That's the bigger narrative arc that is going to help us as the reader feel like, wow, I've been through so much with Kevin. Like I've been through this journey with him. We need you to be one thing at the beginning of the book, and we need you to have transformed in some way by the end of the book. And you will be able to draw that imaginary narrative arc a lot better if you write the first draft. You'll see, it's almost like, what's that Steve Jobs quote? You connect the dots looking backward. This is your time to look backward and can connect the dots.
It's interesting you say that because I just did a presentation at Helium 10 last year called the 10 Commandments. And the presentation, what I have, every time I see a quote, whether it's I'm reading something, reading a book, I hear someone say it on TV, I've taken them from America's Got Talent, that girl that died of cancer on America's Got Talent. She said some really cool quote. And when she said, I like hit pause and backed it up, and I type it into my phone, into the Notes app. And I have just 3 files of just one. I just pasted in there 3 files of just quotes about anything. It could be about money, losing weight, about marketing, about just the 4 burners theory or whatever. And so last year I sat down. I needed to do a presentation for Helium 10 at a live event. And I was like, I don't want to just do the same old hacks and the same old stuff. I want to have some fun, do something different. So I actually went through all that, organized it into 10 Commandments, and like okay, here's all the ones about health. Here's all the ones about marketing. Here's all the ones about family. Here's all the ones about whatever. And so these are Kevin's 10 Commandments of life and business. And then I showed each of those. I go into, here's the health and here's 4 or 5 quotes. And then I would try to tie, I didn't have time to flush it out, but in a book I could, where I would like, okay, on this one phrase, here's the story that goes for it. And here's the transformation, or here's what happened. So that actually, there's my idea for another book, right? I just need to be an author, right? I was a kid that I think it was 2nd grade or 3rd grade. I actually wrote books in 2nd or 3rd grade. I would take the 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, the copy paper, fold them in half, and like 5 or 6 sheets, staple them, get my big stapler and staple in the middle. And then I would go in there and I would write little books and like draw little drawings. I'm a sucky artist, but I'd draw little drawings. It'd be like about a Pee Wee football team, or it'd be about a guy sitting behind a girl in class and throwing spitballs in her hair or whatever. But they became, I hadn't seen them in years. And my mom just a couple years ago was cleaning out the attic when they moved and brought them to me. And I'm like, holy shit, this is, the teacher used to put them up on the windowsill for people to read. And they're pretty bad, but for a 2nd grader, they're actually pretty good. But so when people want to write a book, some people are looking at it from the money side of things. So most books, I read some statistic that if you sell 5,000 copies of a book, you're considered that's amazing. Yeah. So I think a lot of people go into it with the wrong expectations. So when you're writing a book, it's really not so much about the money; it's about other things, right? What would you advise people on how to set the proper expectations when it comes to writing a book?
And I think for any of these statistics, it's good to bear in mind that it's the whole swath of the publishing industry. A lot of new statistics came to light with the CEO of Penguin Random House was up on they had the big trial or the big case because they were trying to merge Penguin Random House and Simon Schuster, and they had the CEOs up in the stand and answering questions. And he even said, they asked like, what does it take to have a successful book, these days in the publishing industry. And he said, our company is called Penguin Random House because it's random. People don't know. That's why the company was originally named Random House. And so there's been a reason for the publishing industry to acquire a lot of intellectual property, publish it, distribute it, and see what sells. Like, that's been the model. So statistically speaking, most of those books are not going to sell. like no fault of the author, no fault of anyone really. Like, it's not that it's not a good book. It's just, statistically speaking, that's how the industry was built. Was we are going to publish 100 titles a year, knowing full well that only one or two of them is going to sell. And, when I actually did work at an academic publishing house in college, Lynn Reiner Publishers in Boulder, Colorado. And, our goal was to see if we could sign an author who was already a professor at a university or could get the books onto like a syllabus and sell 2,500 copies. That would be amazing if we can find an author who will write a book and we're fairly confident they can sell 2,500 copies because of the connections that they already have. So kind of to put that into perspective, like, the publishing industry is not trying to sell everyone's books equally, right? They're trying to select and find a few authors who can sell a lot of books. And then it's not that much of a headache for them to go ahead and print books. And if something sells, great, right? So when we see these statistics, like, most published books don't sell 250 copies in their lifetime is another statistic. Again, take that with a grain of salt of like, that's kind of how the publishing industry was built. What we're seeing now is authors actually taking their own book sales into their own hands, which they really have not done before. All the way up until, I would say, like 2020s, really. I mean, it's been, for most of the book world, authors have wanted the publishing industry to sell their books for them. And now we're seeing a complete reversal. Authors are saying, I would like my intellectual property back, thanks, and I will go and sell my book. And so I've seen the authors who proactively are marketing their own product, right, Kevin? Like, we know this. Like, this, you take a product out to market and you market it, and it will sell better because you are marketing it. It's just what we would expect. So now we are seeing independent authors outselling a lot of traditionally published authors simply because independent authors are all learning these marketing principles. They're applying them to their books. They're finding their readers. They're selling better books and more books. And so I think we're going to see those statistics start to change because of how authors are changing. They're saying, I'm not, just going to let my intellectual property be bought up by a big publishing house and I'm one of 100 books and they're throwing spaghetti against the wall. No, I'm going to keep my intellectual property and I'm going to find every dadgum way I can find to sell this book, And so for that reason, I think the independent authors have a different trajectory. It means, well, then it begs the question of like, okay, well, how do I make sure that I'm selling? How do I make sure I'm selling books? I think our very, the conversation we just had about the intention of the book and what I want the book to do really matters. A lot of people don't have that conversation with anyone. So when they put the book out, they don't know who their reader is. Like, based on the conversation you and I just had, Kevin, we could probably start to put together like an avatar, right? Who might buy this book? That's kind of, classic marketing stuff, but like, it really is step one. It's not for everyone. It's for a segment of the market. Which segment of the market? And then, many of the things that will help to sell a book are going to be your title and your subtitle and your cover design and your description and your reviews. And so when I talk to authors about like, okay, what's the most important thing I can do to help make sure my book is selling well, like immediately after launch? It's reviews. I'm going to come right back to social proof. And I'm going to say it really is reviews. And many authors are worried about asking someone to be on their book launch team and leave a review during launch. But getting those social proof, getting those reviews really early on, that helps all of your other marketing efforts. Because if you're on a stage or on a podcast or write, a guest article or on someone's TikTok or whatever the form of marketing is, people are going to go right back to that Amazon sales page. If they see 2 1-star reviews, they're not going to buy the book. But if they see, 58 5-star reviews, it's not that many reviews. Most of us could probably get 58 reviews. They're a heck of a lot more likely to buy that book. So and traditionally published books are not even, traditional publishers don't even really help their authors do this. But I think independent authors are seeing the value of those reviews, and that's going to make a huge difference in how many books they end up selling.
So when I'm launching my book, should I just do it? I don't have a big budget. I'm self-publishing. I don't have a lot of money to print a book. Depending on how nice it is, we're not talking a lot of money here. A hardcover book, unless you're doing some fancy gold stamping or something on it, should be $1.50, $2 in small quantities max.
Yeah, I would say paperback, and this book cost me about $2 to print. Yeah.
Yeah, in short run.
Yeah.
Or so if you do mass run like in print in Korea, like I do my calendars, I'm in the calendar business, and we print in Korea because it's, even with shipping and everything, it's way cheaper than printing here, and we're printing 10, 20,000, 30,000 of every title every year, but if you're doing small print run books, it's not, you are paying more per unit, but it's not as bad as what a lot of people think unless you start getting really fancy. I used to do hardcover books, like coffee table books. Now those start getting up in the $5 to $10 range, or even more, depending on what you're doing for a nice hardcover book. We used to publish those with photos in one of my companies. So it's not as much as you might think. And with print on demand and this direct publishing and stuff, you can do 50 books, 25 books, 100 books, and you can send those out and do a soft launch and send those out to people that are going to give you the reviews, so that when you actually do start doing all the social media and all the big plugs, already 23 of your friends have already got the book and left a review. And then you actually go out and you do the big push, like you said, because I agree with you. So when someone comes to, when they come to you to write the book, what do you guys do? So I'm like, okay, I'm just using myself as an example. I want to write a book, so but I don't have time to mess with all this stuff. I'm a decent writer. I could definitely write the first draft. Okay, let's take that off the equation. I'll write the first draft, and then I'm like, Morgan, help me out here. What are you going to do what's your next steps as at Paper Raven, and what would you do for me?
Yeah. So we think of the book in 4 different phases. We meet people where they are, because not everyone starts at the very beginning with us. But phase 1 is content development. So we actually do have like senior book coaches who, we have a process, right? We talk you through the intention of the book, and like we just kind of started the process basically on this podcast, and talking through those stories. And so, when you're working with a book coach, they are talking you through the process, but you're the one who's doing the writing. As it is, everyone's first draft is messy, right? So we're not judging the writing. We're just kind of encouraging you to, keep putting down the stories and the quotes and the lessons learned, and just helping you to get to something like usually somewhere in the 30,000 to 60,000 word kind of range for a first draft. And so we're helping to make sure there's a structure that's coming out in the book, and we're reviewing writing every week and having coaching calls and just kind of being there to support while that first draft is coming out. That's phase 1, content development. Phase 2, you already have a first draft. So now you're in editing. And editing happens usually in 3 different phases. I should use a different word than phase, because we already have phases. Three different passes. So there's a developmental editing pass, very structural. Are the chapters in the right order? Sections and paragraphs, does anything need to be trimmed or removed or moved around? And then copy editing is like fine-tuning the language, wordsmithing, style, repetition, word choice. And then the third pass is proofreading, making sure everything's all, correct. Spelling, grammar, typos, that sort of thing. So phase 1 was content development. Phase 2 is comprehensive editing. Phase 3 is the actual publication. This is where it gets more fun, usually. Cover design, interior design, formatting, anything that you want to do special inside the book, any charts or illustrations or graphs or anything like that. You start to actually visually build the book, and then create all the files that will be sent to the printers. Now, these files, yes, they can be sent to Amazon KDP. They can be sent to Ingram Spark for other bookstores, your Barnes & Noble, your independent bookstores, your libraries, or Ingram Spark. They can be sent to Korea, and do a print run from Korea, but you're creating those files that will be either uploaded or emailed to the printer. And in this phase is where we're also doing the Amazon optimization, the keywords, the categories, and making sure that everything's ready to be optimized for Amazon. The 4th phase is launching the book. So this is actually getting our book launch team together, uploading everything to Amazon. We want to make sure that as soon as you upload that ebook to Amazon, that you have a promotion planned and ready to roll out, and that you're hitting number ones in categories to help engage that algorithm. We're usually going out for bigger, for some folks, they want that bigger push, the podcast interviews, the book awards, the endorsements, that kind of stuff. So, we essentially end up creating a scope that's a good fit for the author and the book that they're working on right now. But if they're starting from ground zero and they want all the way to, big push for podcasts and awards and endorsements, it's going to be kind of all four of those phases.
So it's very similar to what we do on the product side. It's product development, building a listing, product development, sampling, refining it, testing, building a listing, and then launching it. It's basically the same thing. So, but in your case, a lot of people, they don't have the experience. Me as a product seller, I have all this experience. I know how Amazon works, so I'm at a major advantage over the average author who's like, oh, I didn't even know you could do this. I thought I had to have Random House to get my book. What does that process cost somebody? Like what you just walked through, do you do you take a percentage of the sales, or do you do a flat fee or hourly rate, or how does that work? What am I looking at?
We do upfront package prices. So we kind of talk with the author about what they really need. If they need, all four phases kind of all the way through, it could be up to $40,000. And it takes about a year. And some people, they come to us with the manuscript, or maybe they don't want such a big launch, something like that. So we kind of custom fit to them. And it often ends up being somewhere in the $20,000, $25,000 range to get the book done from, Word document, kind of messy first draft, all the way through finished published book that has reviews and is rock and rolling on Amazon.
You said earlier that you've done about 200 books or somewhere along. What's been your best one that just took off? Like you didn't even know it was going to take off, or maybe you had a hunch, but it just took off and became like New York Times bestseller or whatever. Have you had anything like that?
Well, there's no possible way for any of our books to hit New York Times bestseller because they are closed gate institutions.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right.
So indie authors really can't make New York Times in that way. They've been able to make USA Today and Wall Street Journal because of the way those bestsellers lists are put together. But certainly, I was just trying to pull up some of the recent ones. We've had some of them get about 3,000. Recently, actually, we found some really good promotion sites to help us find new readers for these books, which is kind of the sticky point for new authors who don't have an audience. Is like, well, where do I find readers? So we've been finding some good groups of readers who are willing to try books when they're new, and been able to get somewhere in the ballpark of 2,000 to 3,000 downloads or sales of a book in about a week, which has been pretty phenomenal for brand new authors. And so for our authors, our first major hurdle is let's help you get 100 reviews. How do we get 100 reviews on the book? Well, first you need the number of people who've read the book who are even able to leave a review. So what you're really talking about is how do we get, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people kind of to read and know the book exists. And then that should be enough volume of people to come back and leave a review. But yeah, we've had authors who, most of our authors are playing the long game. So they're continuing to sell kind of year over year. I know Tracy, I don't know if you want to go nonfiction, fiction, but Tracy Borgmeyer has written a chapter book, middle grade chapter book, 5-book series, and she sold something like 20,000 copies of her books over years, not all at once. Lori Scott has written a memoir about being a transgender Christian. Actually, she's in Texas, and so she talks about being conservative and how that's a difficult issue, and she sold another 15 or 20,000 copies of her book. So, ours probably sit in that range. My own book's in there, 15, 20,000 copies is probably about where we are, which is not like breakout bestseller, but it's a lot of books to sell. And if you're really playing the long game, you're not just selling books, you're going for the speaking, you're going for the clients. And obviously the story that I tell people on what has a book done for me? It's the back of this book, I've built the 7-figure business. So, I think it's the book that helps to attract the right type of readers that could then become your clients. But you do have to have that intention in mind as well, because it's not just about selling books. At the end of the day, you're either building a business or you're building a backlist as a novelist, and you're going to sell a lot of books, not just one book.
So if you sell 20,000 of a book, what's a standard price, like $19.95 or something like that? just a kind of ballpark.
Yeah. So
So just,
ebooks are usually around $7.99 to $9.99, and you get 70% of that ebook.
well,
Paperback,
that's what I asked. You get 70%. So Amazon takes 30%.
yep.
Okay.
Paperback books these days are around $19.99. When you're doing print on demand, the print cost is higher, and Amazon takes a cut. So you probably get closer to $8 on a $20 book because of the print on demand and Amazon's cut. And then bookstores, actually, if you sell through brick and mortar bookstores, they want a 55% wholesale on the retail. So, they want to buy the book. If it sells for 20, they want to buy it for, 9.
11. Or they want 55% off. So
They
they're
want
paying
55%
45%.
off.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they want a discount. Okay. So they're giving you 9, then let's say it costs you $2. So you're in it, you get $7. And
Yeah.
then,
I
so,
tell
so on a good selling book that sells 20,000, if it costs me 20 grand with your services to put it together, yeah, I should clear at the end of the day. I should clear 6 figures at the end of the day, and profit over time. If it's a decent, reasonable seller, and there's no guarantees of that, it could take off and do way better. But you just said it, the big thing is off the back of it. What's the purpose? And that you built a 7-figure business off the back of that. And so it's definitely more than paid for itself. What about AI right now? There's a big push. And Amazon's had to clamp down on this because everybody sells stories about people writing travel books and just having AI write a travel book about Paris and then just publishing. Like there's people on YouTube saying you can make a shitload of money just by you can knock out 50 books a day and just have AI write one on Paris and AI do this or do children's books. Just come up with a story, give it the basics, and it'll do it. And Midjourney will make all the pictures, and you can publish like crazy. What are your thoughts around all that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit of a fad at the moment. And I think AI is going to be really useful for authors and for anyone who does any creative work. I think AI is going to help us to be more creative. But I think we're in this weird little phase where everyone's like kind of overusing AI in a lot of ways. And ultimately, I think it's going to result in readers finding their favorite authors, like their favorite personality brands and saying, I like your books. I know you and I know that you write your books and I like your books. And so I think it's actually going to encourage readers to find out, wait, who are the authors of these books? Where are they on Instagram or TikTok? Or have I heard them on a podcast before? And want to know more about the author because you just can't necessarily trust whatever is there on Amazon. And I think reviews ultimately will also sort of take out a lot of these, right? Because you have a travel book on Paris and you got people who read it and then they're like, these cafes don't exist. They're all going to come back and leave 1-star reviews, right? So as long as the review system works, which, I mean, we could talk about that, but that's a rabbit hole. Theoretically, if the review system were a free market system, it should all work out.
Yeah, I agree with you on the example there of the creativity because I use for my newsletter. I write it all, but sometimes I'll use AI for creativity. So I think it's valuable in that way. But people that are depending on it to do all the writing is a mistake.
Yeah.
At least at this point, maybe in the future it's going to get better, but I think it's a mistake right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's great for research, the way that you used it, where I've written something, but could AI add something to it, and run it through. Artistic stuff, I think it's interesting to, play with some different visuals, get some different look and feel to, compare different ways that you might put something together visually. But I think at the end of the day, we want the human to be the creator of the artwork, even if the human's using AI to.
Awesome. Well, I'm just looking at the time. Holy cow, we've already been talking this long. This is like back like the Driven conference when we're having cigars and just sitting out there.
Just need some cigars and whiskey out on the balcony.
That was awesome. Yeah, cool. Well, Morgan, this has been great. If people want to learn more, maybe someone's like, man, I want to publish my own book. How would they find out about you guys and start the process or learn more?
Yeah, sure. So paperravenbooks.com is where everything lives. And some people, they ask me, can you just give me an overview of what the publishing process looks like? What should I expect? Do you have a checklist or something? So I did actually put together a checklist in case people want it. You can go to paperravenbooks.com/ready. READY, like ready. And I've got a checklist over there for you and kind of an overview of what the publishing process might look like for you.
Well, Morgan, thanks for coming on. This has been fun. We'll have to do it again sometime and tell more stories.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Kevin. It's been an honor.
So after talking to Morgan, I think I'm going to have to go out there and publish a book. I think I'm going to have to get with her and actually put some of my stories down, because everybody keeps telling me, you should write a book. Now, that's good stuff. Thanks, Morgan, for coming on. Hopefully that gave some of you some inspiration and some ideas. We'll be back again next week with another awesome episode. It's a pretty cool story, actually, so you don't want to miss it. 2 sons and a father and their Amazon business and how it all started and what they're doing. Pretty cool stuff. But before I leave you today, I've got some words of wisdom for you. The things you do for yourself die with you, but the things that you do for others and the world live forever. The things that you do for yourself die with you, but the things you do for others and for the world live forever. Have a great week. See you soon.